All right, hey guys. In this first short video, I want to talk about the kind of the background to India, the formation of the modern Indian subcontinent, and then the next two videos are going to talk more about the impact of Hinduism on Indian society, and then the other religions in India. But let's get started here. All right, so we see the Mughal Empire, this empire that had come to dominate the Indian subcontinent, was founded by a man named Babur. He had um, origins in the Mongol Empire, and he had at least claimed to have directly descended from the great Mongol leader Genghis Khan. Actually, or Mughal, sorry, is a derivation or a mispronunciation of Mongol, and that's where Babur gained his prominence, was drawing upon that connection, because the Mongols are seen as these really strong military leaders, military commanders, and they were able to dominate most of Asia. So him drawing on that in India gave him a lot of prominence, gave him a lot of authority, and he had been exiled. His family had been exiled from the Mongol kingdom in Central Asia. So that's where he, trying to kind of reclaim his prominence, drove him into India. That's where we see him kind of attacking this northern region of India that we see here outlined by this kind of orangey or yellowish orange area in northern India. The western part that would border on modern day Pakistan, the Punjab region, through Delhi all the way east to modern day Bangladesh, and the border with Nepal. So he was able to dislodge the leader, the Sultanate in Delhi, and establish the Mughal Empire. And that was a key thing for him, for his descendants, because that gave them a foothold in the region. So we talked about Babur being the founder. He had a relatively short reign, only about 4 years, but nonetheless an important guy, an important person. The next guy, there are a couple leaders in between these guys. Obviously, we see about 140 years in between them. But the next guy that we're really going to focus on is a man by the name of Aurangzeb. All right, he ruled in the end of the 17th, early 18th centuries, and he was a brilliant military commander. We'll kind of jump back a slide. He was able to extend the southern reach of the Mughal Empire all the way down to really the tip of the Indian subcontinent, right, near Sri Lanka. And again, he was a brilliant commander. He was able to expand control or the capacity of the Mughal Empire to its greatest extent. But he was also a brutally oppressive. He was a follower of Islam. He was a strict follower of Islam. So he attempted to institute many of the key teachings of Islam, where he is trying to control behavior. Right? And for many people who obviously did not believe in Islam, that was a problem, because he was trying to tell them what they should do. So you're talking about avoiding alcohol, instituting other policies on the Hindu religious practices, and that upset and angered a lot of people, and that ultimately led to his downfall towards the end of his life, and really the end of the Mughal Empire. But the Mughals weren't the only ones interested in India. The Europeans had a strong interest as well. We see that the interest in Asia, we'll include India in that, dated back for centuries. We see with the Silk Road and Marco Polo, kind of the origins of this interest. But problem with the Silk Road and the overland route was that it was very dangerous. It took a long time to get from major cities in Europe to travel along through modern day either through modern day Turkey or overland through modern day Russia. through these mountains to China, to India, to China, then take all that time to travel back, right? And then at the same time, you're at risk of being robbed, being killed, losing all the goods that you just traded for in India or in China to these bandits. All right, so it was more profitable, or many of these leaders saw it as more profitable to go overseas, find a sea route. And that's what Prince Henry the Navigator tried to do. He had funded voyages that explored Africa and other parts of the world, but we see this oversea route to India was a huge goal for him, because they wanted to get to those spice markets, those exotic good markets in India, and really further extended east into China. And that paid off for them, because they were able to find that route at the end of the 15th century and really dominate the region for at least a little while. I know we'll talk about the influence of other nations, but for the Portuguese, they were able to build a seafaring empire that put them on the map and allowed them to dominate Europe and really dominate the world for, like I said, a period of time. But Portugal wasn't the only one interested in India. We have, with the English, the Dutch, the Danish, and the French, all interested in trying to get their piece of the pie in India, because of the importance of these trade routes and the importance of these tradable goods. So it wasn't long before the Dutch, again, the English, the Dutch, the Danish, the French joined Portugal in India. But England was able to kind of take control or take over in India, because they defeated those other European powers in the 7 Years' War in the mid 18th century. That, I don't know if you guys remember from U.S. history, the French and Indian War. That was also tied to that same time period in North America. But by extending their control over India, England was able to really dominate this area for the next just about 200 years, little under 200 years, and that was something that really made the English Empire. And we're talking about the sun never set on the English Empire or the British Empire, and that was very much so true, because they were able to kind of extend their reach into Southeast Asia, or into India and then Southeast Asia. But India today wouldn't be where it was without that past. But it's still important to recognize India today as a great military, great economic, nuclear power in the world. Right? Currently, they have about 1.34 billion people, just about 4 times the amount of people in the United States. So it's a huge population, and it's a very, very highly dense population. So we'll see when we get into talking about the current situation in India and the problems they face. A lot of it is tied to, in one way or another, that overpopulation. The other thing it's tied to is cultural and religious conflict. See, that 80% of that population in India claims to be Hindu. About 15% is Muslim. So that's a huge difference in overall population that kind of led to some strife between those two groups. And it's something hasn't really been resolved, even throughout its more modern history. And it continues to impact today. We'll look at some of the policies of the current Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, and how that's kind of inflamed the anger between these two groups. Their capital, I know it's not a great map, but it's in the northern region of India. So you see right up here. And their government is very similar to the United States. So they have what we call a federal republic with a central government. All these local, you see these colored areas here, kind of like states. They have their own local governments, but ultimately there's a federal leader in the prime minister. You have a legislative body, that creates laws, passes laws. Then you have a judicial body and some kind of court system that ensures that the laws are enforced. Like I said, very similar to the United States and Great Britain.